Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. I just got done recording an episode with my friend Brooke Turbyfill, and we're new friends. We just met because we were part of a collaborative book project together, and we're going to talk all about that in the episode, so you can check it out. All right, let me tell you a little bit more about Brooke. Brooke owns Turbo Words Editing, where she helps authors, magazines, busy professionals, and ministry leaders craft and publish their best words. I love that. Even that. I'm like, those are good words. Their best words. I want to publish my best words. Okay. She also writes for a variety of publications on topics such as family, community life, mental health, and spiritual formation. Her latest collaboration was as a contributing writer for The Courage to Raise, a compilation book that encourages parents who have children with special needs. Brooke and I won't go into her children's specific diagnoses a ton. It does come up a little bit, but you'll hear in the episode that one of the aspects that Brooke is navigating is honoring her own needs and the needs and requests for privacy from her children. And some of you will very much relate to that, and some of you not at all, because maybe your child's not able to advocate for them wanting privacy. But I think regardless actually of our children's ability to communicate, I think that what we share and how we share it is a topic that I think is important to consider and also hard to navigate, because how do we share our own stories without also sharing the stories of our children? And so let's get in the episode. We have a couple fun stories to share about our time together, or about my time together with her in South Carolina and North Carolina. All right, let's welcome Brooke to the show. Hello, my friend Brooke. Welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I was thinking, okay, so this is our second time recording together because combination of issues with the first one. But I was thinking, well, you know what? We had both desired to stay in touch. And so look at us.
Look at us. We're already doing it.
We're doing great. And with that, let's tell everybody a little bit more about you. And I'll mention we are co-authors of the latest and greatest. Actually, it's not the latest book from our publisher, Hope Books or Hope Publishing. What's it called?
I think it's Hope Books Publishing.
Hope Books. Actually, Hope Books Publishing. Okay, I almost had it right. I actually have the book right here because I don't know if you got your copies, but I got my copies in the mail. I did get my
copies. Yes,
it's called The Courage to Raise: The Heart of Parenting a Child with Special Needs. And so we were co-authors of this book together, and we had the privilege of traveling together. 2 moms in a car, our electric blue rental car, and we had a great time. So let's talk a little bit more about who you are. So share, snapshot of now, how you got here, all the goodies.
Sure. I'm a mom of 2 teenagers, one who is 13 and one who just turned 17 last weekend. And
Happy
my
birthday.
My husband, been married almost 20 years. And our daughter was diagnosed at she started showing signs around age 7, but she wasn't diagnosed till age 10 with a form of epilepsy called sunflower syndrome. And so that's kind of what led us into this special needs community. And then our son, a few years later, also has epilepsy and was diagnosed with a different kind of epilepsy. So we have a couple different things going on.
You got a couple different things going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I think is interesting about your story, or really kind of your arrival to the club of special needs moms, is that I guess you're what we'll call a late bloomer,
Hmm.
as in you had very typically developing, well, I mean, for the most part, you shared a little, couple different aspects of stories with me that we won't necessarily get into today, but very much, living a typical mom experience.
Exactly.
And your children were living typical children experiences. So, I think straying from the pack of normal later in life, I think has its own challenges. What has that been like for you?
Yes, it has been a little bit isolating, I will not lie. Probably because our kids were close to and in the teen years when we sort of jumped into this pool. And while they can both swim, if we're going with that metaphor, they don't necessarily have all the tools that you might want them to have. And like after sort of being raised, in the special needs community, we're all kind of figuring it out in how we can relate to each other well and honor each other well. I'm trying to honor their desires, but also meet my own needs in this process. So it's been a little bit bumpy of a road sometimes. And, our son, when he was young, he was diagnosed with sensory processing and ADHD. And so we sort of like had a lot to overcome with him early in life. And he worked super hard, did all the therapy, and ADHD is still something he very much has to cope with a lot. But we kind of felt like around the same time we started getting her diagnosis, we kind of felt like, okay, we're landing in the land that everyone else lives in.
Mm-hmm.
And then that didn't last long. And I think we didn't really have a lot of time to sort of process any of the things we had been going through as a family. Because during all of this in the background, we had a move and a home sale and switching schools and just a bunch of life that's hard on its own. And then you had all this in the background. So we didn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have time to go, we have a great special news community around us and we are in this community, you know. It was a little bit like, oh, here we are.
Well, and I think though, okay, thank you. So I think you articulated that so well. And I also think though, I mean, you and I had the opportunity to talk about even some of the language and how you arrived at actually identifying as a special needs mom.
Hmm.
And, you told me a story about desiring something for you and your husband. You ended up talking to this woman. Tell me the story about this
Yeah,
woman you talked
sure.
to.
Yeah. So last fall, my son had several seizures and had been newly diagnosed. And we had already been through a lot with our daughter the last couple of years. And one day, my husband and I were talking, and we realized with every loud noise, we would both jump. Like it didn't matter where we were. And we kind of looked at each other and said, gosh, that almost is a little bit like PTSD. Like we don't know for sure, but we feel like we're both really struggling with just waiting for the shoe to drop, so to speak, every other time we hear a noise. Maybe we should get some help.
I love that. You're like watching each other like flinch, like
Yeah.
literally. You're like,
Yeah.
maybe
Because our
we should.
kids weren't
Yeah,
having this problem because they're the ones going through it, right? We were the ones
totally.
having to help them. So we reached out to a local ministry that we knew did marriage retreats. And in the process of several emails back and forth, the woman said, I think you would fit into this marriage retreat that we run for parents of special needs. And I kind of sat there for a second and then I responded, well, that's really great. Is there anyone else that it would go toward that might fit the bill better or something to that effect? And she said, no, I think you guys fit the bill just fine. And I think you would find like-minded parents here who are going through a lot of the same things you are. And that was really the first time I'd ever really envisioned myself in this community.
I love the way that you retell that story. Well, but I think it's so important. And actually, that's the reason why in spite of, I actually prefer the term, I say my son's disabled. I don't typically say my son, I say both, but I prefer the term disabled. He doesn't care. He has fond feelings about both. But it's the reason why I continue to use the name, the Special Needs Mom Podcast, is because I think it's the key that unlocks the most doors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and that's how moms find me. They think, oh, I think I'm a special needs mom. I'm going to Google special needs mom stuff. They don't typically start with the word disability.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that is, but it is.
I actually did Google special needs after that email exchange.
Yeah, interesting. And I think, and I relate a lot to you, whereas our gateway to this life was cancer. So like, it wasn't like, oh, like you have this diagnosis that kind of puts you in this category. It was a little bit more slow going because honestly, it took me quite a long time to actually recognize that we were going to be permanently disabled. And also therefore like kind of fit in this special needs world. It was a really, I mean, I go back to like the elementary school years and I did not know where I fit. And that's why this story, I think, of you having this woman generously say, hey, I think this would be great for you. And I think the actual picture of you struggling with like, is that where I belong now? And,
Right.
you know, I think you and I talked about like, it's not a club that any of us would be like, you know, I want that club. That
Right.
looks fun.
Right.
No, it's a club we're like, no, not that one. Please,
Right.
God, take me from the club. And I say that, you know, loving the community that we're in and all of that. But I mean, not everybody feels this way. But if I could release my son from the burden of his disabilities, I would do so in a heartbeat.
Yes.
You know? So it's like loving where we are, but also acknowledging that it's not an easy place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other thing that I thought that I was like, you know what? We had a good chuckle over all of our sleep supplies and we forgot to mention that.
Oh, that's right.
In our first recording. And so I want to I was like, we're going to use this opportunity to entertain. So Brooke and I, we met up in Atlanta-ish area in Georgia and drove through South Carolina up to North Carolina, spent a couple nights there together to do all the things to celebrate the launch of our book together. And so, you know, we're getting all set up in the hotel and getting acquainted because we had never met before. And I don't know exactly how it came up. Maybe you remember more than me, but I was like, oh yeah, like I have quite a few like pieces of equipment, like my sleep uniform, which includes, I can only imagine what I look like, which includes earplugs at hotels, most of the time at home too. And at hotels, always hotels and hospitals, sleep mask. And the one that really tops it off is my mouth guard, which is about 15 years old and is definitely yellow, not white anymore, not clear. So
Yeah.
I am ready. And so that's my equipment. What is your equipment?
Yeah. I travel with special pillow. I also travel with a sound machine that I can only have at a certain volume on a certain setting. And is that it?
Oh, no, your back scratcher.
Oh, right. And I have a back scratcher. I forgot about that. That lives with me in the bed in case my back itches while I'm sleeping.
That was my favorite part. And so I'm like looking at all of our stuff and thinking, this is hilarious. Let's lay out all of our equipment that these two middle-aged women use to sleep. And I feel like, you know, our friends out there probably have a couple to add that they might use as well. And I don't know. I think it's pretty great. So, but
do people leave comments? Maybe they can leave comments on
That'd
your
be a good.
show
Yeah,
notes.
actually, people can text the show. So text the show. Let us know your sleep equipment. But yeah, we were quite the pair. Getting our sleep, prioritizing our sleep. Okay, let's see. What else do we want to talk about? Should we talk about the story about our accidental happening onto the Clemson campus? Okay.
Yeah.
Where should we start? So we're driving. Go ahead.
Yes. I was going to say we were driving through Anderson. We were heading toward Anderson. That's right.
Because that's where we were supposed to go. Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So we stopped at these places called rest stops?
Welcome centers or rest stops, however you want to call it.
In the South, we have welcome centers. We have rest stops in California, but they're not very friendly. I'll say that.
Okay.
I mean, they're unmanned. They're basically like a nice,
okay.
safe place to go to the bathroom, which is great. Okay. So, Brooke and I had just met. It's like midday and ish. And we're like, we need to eat lunch. So we found a spot. Lovely lady in South Carolina directed us toward a place, and we had our plan. And I like a plan. I like to know where I'm going when I'm driving. And so we were driving along, chatting, and I missed the exit.
Mm.
Not
Yeah.
a problem, right? But then you're like, oh yeah, there'll be a next exit like in a second here. Just look for it. And that did not happen. So we're like, okay, let's do plan B. And you were on the phone figuring this out. I'll let you tell the story about what.
Yeah.
how
So
you
I
found-
was trying to I wanted to find a local place. That was my
Same.
goal.
Yeah.
And that had a variety of things. And I think the place, I always forget it. It was something Sisters, right?
Delish Sisters.
Delish Sisters was the name that popped up in my Google search. And I thought, well, that sounds fun. I didn't even look at the menu, but I thought we should just go there.
I know. I think it's funny you forget the name, and then that was the whole reason. You're like,
I know.
You're like, leader's like, I like this name. Let's go there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I'm like not looking at the map, and I'm like normally the type where I'm like, okay, let's see how far it is, and because we were driving like quite a few hours to get to where we were going. But I'm like, you know what? We don't have anywhere to be. Like we had the whole day to get there. And so I'm like, let's do it. So
Yeah.
we recharted, we put it in the old map and started driving. And we had, did you have any idea where like we were going?
No. I'd never been. I mean, I'd been to Anderson, but there seemed to be no exits for a while after that. And so
Yes.
I just thought, well, this must be it. Like
This is all we got.
until we reach North Carolina, I mean, this might be it. So I just thought, let's do it.
So we're en route, we're driving, and like, I don't know, I'm thinking this place is like looking really cute. Like I, have not been to the South at all. And so I'm enjoying the drive. And we're driving through Clemson. And I'm like, oh, I've heard of this place. And I'm kind of like thinking, oh, this is fun. I get to see this place and it's pretty and all that. And we, parked, all the things, get to this restaurant, Delish Sisters, which was so adorable. It was so
was
adorable.
Cute. Inside a hotel, the Shepherd Hotel.
Yes, inside a hotel.
I can remember that for some reason.
Yeah, no, it was like all of it together was just, A++. So we're eating, we're doing our thing, we're enjoying ourselves. And I did notice that there was somebody working that I was like, oh, like it looks like that this is a place that employs disabled people. I love that. This is great. But I didn't honestly think too much about it. But interestingly enough, I had just come from a place called Mend Coffee, which is in Atlanta area. And I don't know exactly the affiliation, if it's that Catherine Wolf from Hope Heals owns it or is just affiliated. I don't know exactly, but it is, I think the best way to describe it is an interability place where it is designed to be accessible to all people, and therefore all people are there. And it was the most beautiful experience. I mean, I just stopped to get a coffee and kill some time, so I wasn't too early, although I was late to meet you and your husband. I just, stopped. My friend had mentioned it from California, and so I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So I stopped there, and I was just filled with so much isn't this incredible to see a place that was designed where all people can enjoy it? Whatever people's disability didn't matter, but it was just, I don't know. I'm going to say it was transformational, which sounds like a lot for a coffee shop, but I think if you knew the spirit of what it's like to be in a place that is designed and appreciates all people versus where people, oh, we have to make accommodations, so we will. It's just a very different attitude. And so I was coming from that. And so going into this lunch place, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, these people from the South know how to do this whole thing, right? And I'm thinking not too much of it. And so you and I, again, in the spirit of not really in too big of a hurry, we're wandering around the shop after we had finished eating. And there was a couple things I think kept kind of tipping us off to be like, this place doesn't seem like the others. What was it for you that stood out? Yeah. And then I was looking, they had coffee for sale. And there was unique artwork on each different coffee. And then on the back, it said the artists were all intellectually disabled people from I don't know where. But I was like, oh, well, that's cool. And it was one of those things where like I picked up on one thing and then I kept looking and then we're chatting. We're like, wait, we think that there's something different about this place, different in a good way. And so we ended up talking to the Marianne is her name because we're now Instagram friends, to Marianne, who had helped us order our lunch. And she had said when we had met her initially, oh, I moved here. We were just making small talk. I moved here. My son went to college here. But when we went back to talk to her again, we realized that her son was part of the Clemson LIFE program and I think he has Down syndrome. And that's kind of what brought her here. And so she was working at this cafe, and this cafe employs people as part of a extended training period and affiliated with Clemson LIFE. And like, basically it's also a place that has created a place of belonging and support and all the things. And if you're not familiar with Clemson LIFE, I'm only semi-familiar with it. It's like essentially a college program for people with intellectual disabilities. And so it was just like, I don't know why it felt so amazing. But I guess also you and I there as authors of this book and like just all of it coming together just felt so like God ordained, in my opinion. She really was. What a bright spot. So now I have very warm feelings about Clemson. And that was a good lunch too. I really enjoyed it. Okay, let's see. The other aspect of your story that I wanted to share, because I think you said it really well as you were kind of describing yourself earlier, is honoring your children and also making sure you get what you need. And I think the aspect that you didn't particularly mention is that privacy is very important to one of your children in particular. And so you actually don't publicly share parts of their story. And in that you obviously privately you share it, but how, I guess, maybe share a little bit what you would share about your experience and kind of where you find yourself. A friend had mentioned it from California. And so I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So I stopped there and I was just filled with so much like, isn't this incredible to see a place that was designed where all people can enjoy it? Whatever people's disability didn't matter, but it was just, I don't know. I'm going to say it was transformational, which I mean, sounds like a lot for a coffee shop, but I think if you knew the spirit of what it's like to be in a place that is designed and appreciates all people versus where people, oh, we have to make accommodations, so we will. It's just a very different attitude. And so I was coming from that. And so going into this lunch place, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like these people from the South know how to do this whole like thing, right? And I'm thinking not too much of it. And so you and I, again, in the spirit of not really in too big of a hurry, we're like wandering around the shop after we had finished eating. And there was a couple things I think kept kind of tipping us off to be like, this place doesn't seem like the others. Like, what was it for you that stood out?
And on the back, it said they donated their proceeds to, I can't remember if it was a supportive community of the special needs community or something tied to the special needs community. And it just kind of struck me as, wow, well, that's a cool coincidence. I still didn't register anything other than that. And then I think you saw the coffee, right? You were looking at the coffee?
Yeah. And then I was looking, they had like coffee for sale, and there was like unique artwork on each different coffee. And then on the back, it said like the artists were all intellectually disabled people from I don't know where. But I was like, oh, well, that's cool. And it was one of those things where like I picked up on one thing and then I kept looking and then we're chatting. We're like, wait, we think that there's something different about this place, different in a good way. And so we ended up talking to Marianne is her name because we're now Instagram friends, to Marianne, who had helped us order our lunch. And she had said when we had met her initially, oh, I moved here. We were just making small talk. I moved here. My son went to college here. But when we went back to talk to her again, we realized that her son was part of the Clemson LIFE program and I think he has Down syndrome. And that's kind of what brought her here. And so she was working at this cafe, and this cafe employs people as part of a extended training period and affiliated with Clemson LIFE. And like, basically it's also a place that has created a place of belonging and support and all the things. And if you're not familiar with Clemson Life, I'm only semi-familiar with it. It's like essentially a college program for people with intellectual disabilities. And so it was just like, I don't know why it felt so amazing. But I guess also you and I there as authors of this book and like just all of it coming together just felt so like
no, definitely
God ordained.
Yeah, Marianne was lovely too.
She really was. What a bright spot. So now I have very warm feelings about Clemson. And
It was good.
And that was a good lunch too. I really enjoyed it. Okay. Let's see. The other aspect of your story that I wanted to share, because I think you said it really well as you were kind of describing yourself earlier, is honoring your children and also making sure you get what you need. And I think the aspect that you didn't particularly mention is that privacy is very important to one of your children in particular. And so you actually don't publicly share parts of their story. And obviously, like, privately you share it, but maybe share a little bit what you would share about your experience and where you find yourself.
That's been a difficult aspect for me in particular, which is interesting because I'm not a super outgoing person, and so it wouldn't necessarily seem like something that would be hard for me to keep that part of, our lives a little bit quieter, other than when we do have medical needs and when we are struggling. It's nice to be able to say, hey, we're over here a little bit struggling. And when you can't share the details, it makes it hard.
Mayday. Mayday.
It's funny because we have, we've moved to a new town. And so we have completely new everything, new church, new friends, new schools. Just if you could, write a whole new story, it would just be, we started over basically, which was not our intent. We tried to kind of stay in our little area where we had raised our kids and where both my husband and I grew up. And we just could not afford the housing there anymore. So we ended up having to move a couple hours away. And in that process, the supports we had in place where we didn't have to be quiet about everything are gone. So now that this teenhood has been reached, and there's some requests for a little more anonymity, I totally understand that. As somebody who went through some medical challenges as a teen myself. But it does make it a little bit tricky as a parent to find your footing and to find people who get you. I definitely have some lovely friends here. Definitely. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure this part of our story anyone really gets because there's only a couple of people that know even just a smidge of it. I don't think anyone here knows the entire story. Because I haven't felt free to share it. And to be frank, nobody's asked either. So it's kind of like, okay, my husband and I, we're on the same team. Yeah.
Yeah, you got your husband and you. And well, that's where I think, and again, you are still like relatively new to the club. We'll call it a club. And so I think it's, figuring out, I think you're in the process, right, of figuring out how you do get the support that you need, like where, and finding those sacred spaces where you can share and disclose everything because you know that it can honor her request for privacy in a way that also, gives you the opportunity to get.
And that's where like our
friendship
has been lovely for me. I mean, just even though we're not in the same area, just to have that trip timed so well and to be able to be free with our story a little bit has been a blessing to me to just go, oh, okay, it's all right to share the details of where we are. And it can be, we're not in the same communities. So it's a little bit easier because of that.
I know that's where, so I run the Pathway to Peace coaching community. And so it's designed to be a sacred space where we can share all the things. And I think not being part of one another's like immediate community, I think also kind of, it's almost like, how, what are those people called that like
Trolls.
make comments on social media that are just terrible? Okay, trolls.
Yeah.
Okay, well, those are very negative. We don't want to be trolls. But people are more brazen when it's like you're behind a keyboard and just typing out stuff, right? So that's a negative example. But I think it also kind of goes to like when there's a little bit of distance in terms of like,
Mhm.
I'm not going to see you tomorrow. You're not going to see me, right? Of being able to kind of like let down and that like let that guard down. I don't know. I think that there is like an element
Mhm.
of that actually works in our favor. Obviously both here, but in the group that I run.
Yeah,
And it's kind of cool, kind of cool that like while being in person is like, I think, number one preferred, there's other ways that we can get
sure.
what we need. Okay, switching gears a little bit. I was thinking, since we have the second chance to record, I was like, you know what was popping in my mind? What was when we were driving together, I think we were
Mhm.
driving, you're like, I had this other book idea. And actually let's give a little backstory. So your professional is in journalism, writing,
Yes, all of
editing. I
those
guess how would you
things.
describe it?
I've worked as an editor and a writer most of my career. I've also done some ghostwriting. Right now, I own a business called Turbo Words Editing. And so that would imply that I only do editing, which is not true. I also do writing and ghostwriting. And I
Mhm.
consult with other people, like other writers. I have a little community on Substack called On Stories. And so I write to help other writers exhale a little more often than they sometimes do.
I like that way. As I'm like, oh, I need to exhale right now. And you told me about a book idea that popped in your head when
Ooh,
we were driving
was it a
together.
new
Do you
book
remember what it
idea?
was? Yeah, it was something. Remember that? It was like about
Yes.
women and something.
In fact, I
But I was like, oh, that sounds like a
I
good one.
know. I wrote it down too.
Do you remember what it was?
I believe it had to do with championing women to own their needs and to recognize that your needs change as you grow as a person and as you age. Because I think sometimes we can
Hmm.
get so caught up in a season that we were in or that we have been in and just keep trucking along as if that's still our season, if that makes sense. I
Oh
think
my
it was
gosh.
centered around that.
Yeah,
There's a little more detail to it, but that's kind of the basic idea.
I love it. I'd like for you to write that book. That'd be great. I was going to say I can do the forward, but I'm like, oh, I think you need like
No,
a big person to
I'm
do
not
the
a big
forward. So, I mean, the offer's there, but I think maybe we'll see who else we can get. No, I mean, I feel like there's a
Mhm.
lot of seasons of parenting, period. And I think further complicated by the aspects, I think I can speak for myself in the disability space or in the special needs space because I was okay with different levels. I think what I'm recognizing is that I feel like we do get stuck in like what should work. Like, oh, well, this used to work for me and now it doesn't. And then some people, I won't point any fingers. Okay, it's me. Start to go to the place of what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? What's going on? And start to make it mean things about us. Where in actuality, it may just
Mm.
mean that like our needs have changed. And since it happens over time, I think sometimes I could say, I could speak for myself, but obviously I think you resonate with it since you had the brilliant idea that it's almost like the picture of that, frog in boiling water, like doesn't
Yeah.
realize that it's like cooked until it's too late. It's kind of that concept where it happens over time. And
Yeah, and I
I think
think,
that's a great idea.
when we can be empowered by a shift in our mindset, it just opens up a whole new lane for us that maybe we never saw ourselves heading down, but it's not necessarily a bad lane, it's just a new one.
Well, that, and I think also like it maybe can
Mhm.
get us over to that lane faster. Like it's almost like, I mean, not that speed is the thing here,
Mhm.
but like I picture a freeway where like if we're stuck behind something because we're like, well, normally the fast lane works for me. That's the place where I feel most comfortable. It's all, I like to go the fastest. But let's say then we're behind somebody that's going slow. That rather than persist and be like, well, the fast lane's where I should be, recognizing that we actually can and should move over to a different lane because at that time, given the nature of, in this case, the freeway with my analogy, it's working better for us. And so I think a lot of times though, like, I mean, I see this all the time in the work I do with women is that we
Mhm.
get stuck at what we think should be something versus accepting what actually is and then actually
Yeah. I
getting
mean,
what we need for it.
even in
So,
our story, we've shifted multiple times from different school settings. I know you have too. And it's like each time it's like oh, I can embrace this new school setup for my child because it's a new season that we're in. And also, I think it helps you embrace, like, yeah, to use your highway analogy, embrace any kind of bumps as you're shifting, because I think sometimes when you don't recognize your season is changing and you keep trying to do the same thing over and over again, you're less compassionate towards yourself. And when you kind of go, oh, I'm shifting lanes here.
bingo.
If I hit a little bump in the process, that's probably to be expected, right? You can have a little more compassion for yourself and your family.
I love when we keep going with a good analogy. So I love that really works. But I think, oh my gosh, like, so glad that you mentioned that aspect of we can have a little bit more compassion for ourselves because gosh dang
I
it,
don't know.
why is that so hard? Why is that so hard? It's the thing I know intellectually. And like many of us, knowing something and practicing it are two very different things. And so it's constantly a thing that I'm intending to practice more. Let's talk a little bit. So we're on the topic of writing. And I do want to mention, like, for people that are aspiring writers, there's a lot of us out there as special needs parents that feel like, hey, we want to share our story. And so Brooke would be a great contact for you to support you in that journey. But I want to talk a little bit about what had you say yes to the book put together.
Well, I recognized that I was going to be going through a shift in seasons myself. I do writing and editing and have that business, but I also was working as a communications director. And I knew that job for me was ending because we moved. And the book opportunity came along at the right time. And I just thought, this seems like we've kind of navigated this diagnosis for a few years now. It seems like a good time to share. And our daughter's form of epilepsy is something most of the doctors in our community had never heard of. And so I want to help people understand that this is out there. It's called sunflower syndrome and that there is help. Because even now, I'm in some Facebook groups. I think we're one of the lucky ones, to be honest, that has a doctor in it that has heard of it. So many have no idea. And they're getting misdiagnosed all the time. And their children and their families are suffering for it. So that's the primary driver for me is I really want to help other families have at least an idea of something to ask about. Yeah. Yeah.
A place to start. Or even I think knowing that if you're having a similar experience where maybe doctors don't know what's going on, like you're not alone. That I think this community knows more than anyone, like that's a very common occurrence here. Or that you find yourself as more of an expert in the topic than your doctor because, we as mothers and fathers have invested in the nuances of our children and therefore know a little bit more about them than their doctors do in a lot of cases. So what did you like about the book, this particular writing process and being
I
part of
loved
this
the
project?
structure. Our publisher gave us some great structure. So it was hard to get off track, I found.
I did too. I think it made me really enjoy the writing process a little bit more than I would
and that's
have
the funny thing
otherwise.
to me is I'm not normally a super structured person. I think because I've naturally kind of been a good writer, like, you think about the things that you're good at. There's not a whole lot of things I'm really good at. And that's the one that's sort of been consistent throughout my life. Like multiple times since I was young, people have said, oh, you kind of have a knack for writing. So it was never something I approached with like great scaffolding. I wasn't an outliner or whenever you had to do those little brainstorm maps in school, I hated those. And so the fact that I loved this little structure they gave us, it was very simple. And maybe that's what it was. It was super simple, kind of here's where we want you to land. Here's where we want you to start. And it gave us enough flexibility in the middle to sort of tell our stories. I really appreciated that. Just a little bit of guidance. I loved that. It was a very easy process for me, which was refreshing because writing is, not always easy.
What do you think you personally got out of doing it?
That's a good question. Well, honestly, meeting all the other authors was like great for me. It just kind of widened my community a little bit more. Learning about your online community, I think that was the other bonus for me, other than sharing, so that hopefully to benefit other parents that are in our situation. The other bonus for me was just getting to get my feet wet a little bit deeper in this special needs community.
100%. And that's what had me say yes. I think I said it in a previous episode, that for me, I come actually to writing as like from the opposite perspective as you. I struggled with writing. I struggled in all those areas of school. I started college in like a remedial writing course. Took about something to kill your ego. And yeah, I did both math and reading, actually, or writing. I'm a success story. Look at me, how far I've come. No, I actually joke with my community that making typos and spelling errors is part of my brand.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Does that? It's not that I'm sloppy. It's just that that's how I am. It's part of my brand. See, I've embraced it and accepted it and learned to love that part of me. Where was it going with
enjoyed
this?
the book, and writing and all that.
The writing. Okay. So yeah. So opposite in terms of writing is not easy for me. It's not why I said yes. It's the wanting to tap into this new area of community. And I had a sense it would be a little bit more regional, like not from close to where I live, but I was like, I want to spread my wings a little bit and go do something in a different area. And I'm so glad I did. So, well, Brooke and I very much hope that you guys will consider picking up a copy of The Courage to Raise. It's available on Amazon. And it's not like a really long book. I think that's really nice. It's very readable. Like each chapter is written by a different author. And I think we cover a pretty vast array of different disabilities. And so it's a book that definitely leans on our faith and how our Christian faith intersects with disability and special needs, but that it's not, I guess my fear in being a part of a project like that is to have it done so in a everything's okay because God is good kind of like ick factor. And I definitely don't think it had that at all. I feel like what I loved about it is I think that the moms that wrote along with us were very real about struggles that they had as it relates to faith and who God is and who he isn't, and what it's like to make sense of our Christian faith and parenting children. That, I mean, I think you share in your story that, your daughter has asked to, for prayer that the syndrome goes away, and not necessarily being able to say, yeah, let's pray for that and see what happens, like those are hard conversations to have with children. Let's put it that way. Anyhow, so that's a long way of saying, grab a copy of the book and we hope you enjoy it. Grab one for a friend too. And is there anything as we wrap up that you'd like to say to close out?
I think if people grab a copy of the book and look through some of the stories or even just read some of the author bios, I think they'll see there's a variety of moms. They're all moms, except for one was a sibling, right, of someone with special needs. That, like you said, they share kind of the raw, authentic hero's journey where the hero doesn't always win in the way that you want at the end. And it's very story based. So even if you're just kind of needing a little break, it's not like a ton of medical stuff, it's very story based. So, and I think every chapter, even though it's very authentic in the struggle part, I also think you kind of walk away with a little bit of encouragement as well. Wherever you land in your faith, I do think it's accessible to everybody. So, yeah.
I think that's a great way of saying it. Yeah. All right. Well, till the next time we meet, Brooke. All right. We'll see you all in the next episode.